This is your first actual geometry lesson. This is the intro to section 1.2, which discusses points, lines, and planes. The objective of this lesson is to understand the basic terms and postulates of geometry. Okay, again, vocabulary terms are very, very important in geometry, and you're going to find that in these first few sections that we're looking at. Okay, essential understanding. Geometry is a mathematical system built on accepted facts, basic terms, and definitions. In geometry, some words such as points, lines, and planes are undefined. Undefined terms are basic ideas that you can use to build the definitions of all other figures in geometry. Although you cannot define undefined terms, it's important to have a general description of their meanings. Okay, so we can kind of get an idea of what they mean, but we cannot actually define them. Okay, so let's take a look at the key undefined terms here in geometry, and there's really a couple of these as we're looking at these. There are really three undefined terms that are very important, and many of you have seen these before. The very first undefined term is a point. Okay, a point indicates a location and has no size. Okay, how do you name it? You name it with a dot. You also name it with a capital letter. Okay, so as you see here with our diagram, I've given you a diagram of a point. Right here is our point. That's point Z, as you can see, and that's how you label it. Again, this is not anything that's really new to you. You've seen this before in the past. Okay. Second undefined term is a line. Now, a line is represented by a straight path that extends in two opposite directions without end and has no thickness. A line contains infinitely many points. Essentially, though, we know that 2 points, if I connect 2 points, that will create a line. Okay? But I can put as many points as I want to on that line. All right, now, how do we name it? Well, it's labeled with 2 capital letters. Okay, it's made up of, again, 2 points. There's always infinite many points in between, but there are 2 big points that we need to know. It can also be one cursive letter that's in lowercase. Okay, sometimes they'll do that to you as well. You also want to make sure that you must have a line with 2 arrows on top of your letters when you label these. Okay, so as I look here at my example, I've got a line right here, and we've got our line AB here with points A and points B on it. These 2 points created a line. You'll notice these have arrows at the end. Okay, so what that means is that this is continuous. It just keeps going and going and going. And then you'll also see this little cursive letter L right next to it. Okay, so I can name this line AB. Again, notice I have a line with 2 arrows on top. Or I can name it line BA with, again, I have a line with 2 arrows on top. You must make sure you have these 2 arrows there. That's going to be very important. Or, finally, I could name it with one cursive letter, which they designated my cursive letter to be the letter L. They'll use, a lot of times, if they use one cursive letter, they'll either use L or M, one of the two. Okay, so that's a line. Third undefined term is what we call a plane. A plane is represented by a flat surface that extends without end. So a plane never stops, and it has no thickness. A plane contains infinitely many lines. So I can put as many lines as I want into this little thing. Okay, so how do we name it? You name it with at least 3 letters to label a plane. It has to have at least 3. You can have more, but there has to be at least 3. It could be one capital letter in the corner of the plane. In this case, it's not a point. Okay, it's not a point, but it could have one capital letter. A lot of times they'll make it a cursive letter. So let's take a look at our example here. Again, we've got a plane here, and you'll notice I have 3 points in the plane, J, R, and O. So I can name that thing plane JRO. I could name it plane ORJ. I could name it plane JOR, as long as I have at least 3 letters. You'll also notice that you have this little letter down here as well, which is the cursive P, so I can also name that plane P. Alright, so those are the 3 undefined terms that you're going to see most of the time. Okay, couple of sentences here to cover real quick. Planes that lie on the same line. So any points. Any points that lie on the same line are what we call collinear. These are collinear points. Okay? Points and lines that lie in the same plane are what we call coplanar points or coplanar lines. Okay? And then all the points of a line are both collinear and coplanar. They're in the same line, they're on the same line, and they're also in the same plane. Two other vocabulary words that are, again, very, very important. Okay, now let's take a look at what maybe some of your examples are going to look like. Okay, so let's take a look here at the top of the second page. And it says, what are two other ways to name line QT? Well, if you look here at the picture, if I zoom in here a little bit on the picture, and I want to see QT. So I find Q, that's the one point, T is the other point. This is my line, and you'll notice they try to make it sort of three-dimensional. You see the dots going through the plane. This is the line right here that I've marked. So I need to find two other ways to name that line. Well, I can always do it the easy way, and that's I just flip the letters, T and Q. I have arrows on top of my line that I put on top. I could also name this line NQ, or I could throw N and Q together, or I could also name it N and T. Or again, I could flip-flop those as well, but I don't need to. Or you'll notice again that on this line right here, you'll notice that I have a little cursive letter here. So I could also name this line M. Okay? Remember, lines are always with 2 points. What are two other ways to name plane P? Well, plane P is the four-sided figure here. So I need to find, again, in order to name a plane, I need at least 3 letters. So when I name this, I could name this plane, and the 3 letters or the 3 points have to be in the plane. So I could name this letter R's in the plane, V's in the plane, and Q's in the plane. I can name it R, V, Q. If I just did one more, there's multiple ways to do this. I can name it S, Q, and V. As long as the 3 points are in the plane, that's all that matters. And if you'll notice again, you see this little P down here, that's in the corner. That's not a point. That's the actual name for that plane. So I could also name it plane P. Again, there's other multiple opportunities to name that as well. The 2 letters you will not have in the second question are N and T. They're not in the plane. Okay. Third question says, what are the names of the 3 collinear points? Collinear means 3 points that are on the same line. Well, collinear points, if you look here on your picture, 3 points that are on the same line are R, Q, and S. Or you could also say T, Q, and N. Either way. So I've got R, Q, and S. Or I could say T, Q, and N. Those guys are collinear. What are the names of 4 coplanar points? Okay, coplanar points. All right, these are all points that are in the same plane. And again, in order for them to be in the same plane, they have to be, again, obviously in the plane. And if you look here, I could say coplanar points are R, Q, and V. And I got to have 4 of them, so I better include S in there since it says what are 4 coplanar points. Again, the points that are not included on the plane are N and T. They're on the outside of the plane. Okay. All right, so that kind of covers points, lines, and planes. Now, the terms points, line, and plane are not defined because their definitions would require terms that also need redefining. You can, however, use undefined terms to define other terms. So I can use points, lines, and planes to define other things. Okay? A geometric figure is a set of points. So space is a set of all points in 3 dimensions. Okay? Similarly, the definitions for segment and ray are based on the definitions of points and lines. So we've got 3 defined terms that we're going to look at here. Now down below, we're going to start here with the segment. Now, a segment and a line, they're kind of similar, but they're different. Okay? So a segment is a part of a line that consists of 2 endpoints and all points between them. Okay? How do we name a segment? A segment is labeled with 2 capital letters, same thing as a line, except for the difference is the line on the top of the letters has no arrows. So you see over here in the picture, I've got line segment AB, and you'll notice the other thing that on a segment is that it doesn't continuously go on and on. It stops at its endpoints. Okay, so I could name this segment AB if I wanted to, or I could name it segment BA. But on top, there's no arrows. It's just a line. Okay, now rays are the trickiest ones. Okay, because rays are a little bit different. They're a little bit more specific. All right, so a ray is a part of a line that consists of 1 endpoint and all points of the line on one side of the endpoint. So how do we name it? It's labeled with 2 capital letters, just like a line and a segment. Here's the only difference. But the first letter must be the endpoint. That's very important. The first letter must be the endpoint. The second letter is in the middle of the ray. The order does matter on how you label a ray. AB and BA are not the same rays. Okay? The arrow always points to the right in the label. No matter what, even if the ray is going to the left, the arrow is always going to point to the right. Okay, so as you look over here, I have AB, and you'll notice the arrow is over here to the right. So the end point is A. It doesn't go past A. The end point is A. So the first letter has to be A in my label. It's going from A to B, so B is the second letter, and you'll notice again, I have an arrow to the right on the top of it. Now this one down here is a little bit different. This one, the end point is B, because again, it doesn't continue over here. It stops at B. So it goes from B to A, and it keeps going. So B has to be first, because that's the end point. Okay, and then the second letter is A, but again, you'll notice my arrow is always pointing to the right, even if this one up here is to the left. Arrow on a ray is always to the right. Okay, and then the third defined term that we're going to talk about is opposite rays. Opposite rays are 2 rays that share the same endpoint and form a line. In other words, they share the same middle and they go opposite directions. Okay, they share the same middle and they go opposite directions. So, again, as you look here, rays' first letters are the same, but the second letters are different and they must be on the same line. So you'll see here I've got a line with 3 letters, A, B, and C. And you'll notice if I take B and I start at B as my endpoint and I go to C, I could name that ray, BC, ray BC, which is right here. But you'll notice if I start with B and I go the other direction to A, BA is also a ray, and these are opposite rays. And you'll notice again that their first endpoints are exactly the same. Okay, and they end up on the same line. So that's why they're called opposite rays. Okay, now I'm going to finish up here section 1, 2, and the part that I want you to finish up is I want you to be able to go through and name these segments and rays. So I want you to complete A, B, and C before class tomorrow. Okay, that's part of your secret questions. Make sure you have those done before class. As you're working on these, okay, make sure you focus on any questions you may have, and that will go into your WSQ and make sure that you ask that question, okay? So this is the intro to section 1, 2, part 1, and make sure that you complete your WSQ for this.